personal purposes. If the money is not spent on building a bridge, then there will be no point in progressing the task. The next day, the student was already at the airport and soon went to the other end of the country. Upon arrival, he rode first by bus and then by cargo motorcycle to get to his destination. When the guy reached the indicated point, he noted that the road was not easy. Then the streamer called the same unknown phone number from which the message had previously come. We didn't have to wait long, and the interlocutors immediately found each other. It was a girl named Betty. She worked as a teacher at this school. Loaf also introduced himself, and it flashed through his mind that this girl was very young. She also did not expect that he would really come, and especially that he would turn out to be so young. Betty asked if the guy was still studying or working, but he asked to get straight to the point. The girl did not like such straightforwardness, but she did not say anything out loud. The teacher just turned around and told Batten to follow her. They walked a short distance and ended up in a barn, but it was a school where children study. At first glance, everything was clear, but Betty decided to take him to another place. The guys walked along the creaky path near the rock, along which children walk every day. Soon they reached the very gorge and bridge from which the boy fell. The main character was outraged that no one had done anything yet, but Betty interrupted him. She said that even students from distant places had reached news of the economic backwardness of their village. Before Batten, many people donated money to correct this situation, but not everyone knows the truth. The girl told the truth to a student who came to their village. He only asked that if she was aware of all the chaos going on here. Then why didn't she tell everyone the truth? This question puzzled her, and she answered the question with a question. There are already very few people who are involved in charity, and if fraud is revealed, there will be even fewer, and people who really need help will stop getting it altogether. The main character invited her along to check the veracity of Betty's words. If all these stories turn out to be true, then he will force the director to take the righteous path. She was only required to show where this director lived. The student would do the rest himself. On the day when there was a thunderstorm, the guy put on an invisibility cap, which, when worn, reduces the wearer's visibility to 0. In the house, the son asked his father how they would repair the bridge if they spent all the money on the bride price. But the father kept it simple. He was going to hire a couple of village guys and simply replace the most rotten boards, and his son asked if he would fly to them for this. Such questions infuriated the old man very much, and he said that he was trying for the sake of his son. Suddenly the lights in their house went out, which confused the director a little. This was very strange, because according to the son, the neighbor's lights were on. Having brought a candle, the guy suggested that the fuse might have blown. But before he could finish speaking, an incomprehensible wind blew out his candle. His father called him very cowardly, but after hearing his name, he changed his mind. From such a surprise, he fell to the floor and asked who was speaking. The voice replied that the child who had fallen into the gorge was now talking to him. The son moved closer to his father and said in a trembling voice that they had finished the game. The incomprehensible voice was Batten, who was sitting under the table and telling him to read a letter from the baby. Then he stood up from under the table and turned on the light while the director was still scared. The guy stood up first and said that it seemed to him that the boy had left the gorge. In addition, a piece of paper actually appeared on the table in their room. There, the kid from the gorge hoped that the director would give money to build a bridge. Otherwise, he and his son would end up next to him. While they were reading the mysterious letter, the main character made his way through the bushes to the road. Looking up, he noticed Betty and was confused as to why she had come here. Loaf came close and took off his invisibility cap, thanking the girl for the umbrella. This gesture really scared the teacher, and the guy apologized for it. Betty asked where he had jumped out so suddenly, and the student replied that she had simply not noticed him before. Of course, this could not have happened, but this topic was hushed up because Batten had news. He said that tomorrow the director would give her the money. Betty would be in charge of building the bridge. Judging by the expression on the girl's face, it turned out that the main character simply believed her. These words frightened the student. Very much beads of sweat appeared on his face. In response to this, Betty only laughed and said that he was not the only one who could scare her. However, the main character really trusts other people too easily. The guy said that the girl was right in her statement, because he really got excited with the transfer of such a large amount. He wants the money to be managed by a person who cares about the village kids, and that would be Betty. Otherwise, why would a young and beautiful girl with an education live in such a wilderness? Betty thanked the student for his kindness and generosity and promised to do her best. When the main character had already returned to his hometown, he was sad to go through it, because the picture outside the window reflects all the injustice of modern society. I remember how Batten initially perceived the spender's task as a mockery from the system, but now it took on a completely different meaning. Even after completing it, the streamer will try to donate money to good causes to the best of his ability. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by many vibrations of the phone on which messages were arriving. The first one he opened was a message from Kathleen. She was proud of him because a student helped the kids. Next came a message from Julia, who asked if he needed money for this. As messages came in, the guy didn't understand why everyone was already aware of his affairs. Members of the basketball team and Dove also expressed their respect and gratitude to him. He decided to ask about Kathleen, how he knew about it, and the girl sent him the news, which was recently published. It said that a student from the Baton Academy of Arts donated $300,000 for the construction of the bridge. All this admiration made the main character a little awkward, but more pleasant. The taxi driver broke the silence in the car and said that they had reached their destination. He asked not to forget personal belongings in the salon and wished all the best. Getting out of the car, the guy saw journalists crowding at the entrance to the hostel. They immediately noticed the local hero and rushed towards him with all their equipment. They were interested in who Baton's parents were, because they didn't know where an ordinary student could get such a sum. The main character was not ready for such a meeting and did not even know what to answer. But then he collected his thoughts and asked why they were asking him all these insulting questions saturated with mistrust. He explained that they should not care about his parents, and besides, he earned these $300,000 himself. The chief journalist apologized and said that their job is to question everything, to look for pitfalls and reasons for scandal everywhere. Next, he asked Baton to describe the situation as the student sees it from his own perspective. This way, the main character will not only advance in the newsmaker task, but will also explain something about charity to a wider audience. After several minutes of silence, he also apologized for reacting so harshly to their questions. The guy said that in fact, the teacher from that school only reflected a beautiful happy ending in her post. But alas, the darkest side of this situation was left unaddressed. This statement shocked the journalists who interviewed the student. Initially, Baton sent the money to the school director, but then it turned out that he wanted to use it not for the benefit of the children, but for personal purposes. The main character did not tell all this in order to undermine people's faith in charity. He just wants people to not just give money to strangers, but to get to the heart of the problem. In our world, simply abandoning a problematic situation is not an option. Journalists asked how, in his opinion, charity should be carried out. And Baton replied that this experience taught him that one should not blindly trust strangers. The internet is crawling with scammers without a hint of conscience. And if someone wants a good cause, then they need to invest not only money, but also their soul. Over the next few days, the protagonist's hometown discussed the news of how he had donated $300,000. This was talked about in the news and on the radio, and it seemed that now absolutely everyone in the city was aware of this event. There were comments on social networks with the name of Baton's channel, and also that this guy was a TikTok star. The girls asked if the student had a girlfriend, and others said that he was dating a beauty from the traditional painting department. From these rumors, the blonde man standing next to him got really hot because Loaf took away all the popularity. But he soon regretted that he had treated his phone this way in a fit of rage. Because of this new benefactor hero, his nerves were already on edge. At this time, the main character walked next to him with Kathleen, who asked how he managed to convince the director to hand over the money. The guy grinned, and putting his finger to his chin, said that it was a secret. This only provoked Kathleen, and she ran after him right in front of that evil guy. The last thing he heard was their plans to go to the movies the next day. After that, the blonde called his friend and said that he needed to deal with someone. He already knew that Baton wouldn't have long to run around so happy. The next day, in the afternoon, students came out of the cinema and discussed points that they did not understand. Kathleen, without wasting a chance, asked again how he managed to convince the director. The main character realized that the girl still wouldn't let go of this topic and therefore was already getting ready to talk. As soon as he began to tell the beginning, some guys stood in front of him. One of them was with a bat and asked if his interlocutor was Baton from the animation department. The guy was embarrassed and in response to this asked who they were and why they came here. But he did not receive an answer because a crowd of guys with multicolored hair attacked him. The first thing the student did was push Kathleen away and tell her to run to safety. While he was doing this, a heavy bat was already hanging over the back of his head, which was about to hit him. A girl with pink hair noticed this and shouted for Baton to take care of himself. The main character was not the timid type, so he managed to protect him from being hit with a bat. A very strong blow fell on his hand, but he tried not to show it in front of Kathleen. The streamer reminded the girl that she should run to a safe place and call the police. Knowing his strengths and privileges, he promised to delay them for a while. The gang was serious and thought that Baton would not be able to do anything with them. At this time, the friend had already run far enough and only hoped that the guy would withstand their pressure. A crowd of evil guys attacked the main character with bats and fists. Suddenly, the student put on an invisibility cap and disappeared from the eyes of the attackers. The guys with multicolored hair were not prepared for such an outcome, and someone asked what they were doing here. Judging by the bits in their hands, they came here to be someone, but that someone disappeared. The leader of their gang, Jay, also did not understand why they came here. The guy with pink hair couldn't even remember how he ended up in this place. Perhaps the heavens gave them a sign. They want to tell them that guys are doing the wrong thing in life. The gang boss ordered everyone to go home and hug their mothers. The guys began to disperse in different directions, but Baton was going to deal with them. Kathleen had already called the police and said that hooligans had attacked them near the cinema. Also, the girl did not know why they were attacked, because it was very unexpected. One of the hooligans could not shake the feeling that someone was following him. Immediately after this phrase, the streamer, without taking off his invisibility cap, kicked the first bully. One managed to notice the main character, but he did not understand where he flew out from. Batten recommended that he better watch where his teeth fly out. When the gang leader turned around, 2 of his men were lying on the ground in poor condition. A few seconds later, all the hooligans were lying on top of each other and begging for mercy. Batten turned to Jay and asked about who set the hooligans on him. Jay recognized Batten, which made him very scared, and shouted loudly at him. But then he pretended to feel bad and said that knocking was not in his principles. Then the streamer pulled Jay by the hair and asked if he was sure of his words. But it was not hair, but a wig, which was easily removed from the head. From such an action of the main character, Jay tearfully asked to return the wig to him and even told him who sent them. Hearing the familiar name, the student wrinkled his face and wanted to teach that guy a lesson. He was so lost in these thoughts that he even forgot to give the wig to Jay. When the police and Kathleen arrived on the scene, Batten stood over the hooligans as if he had attacked them. The beaten guys asked the policemen to help them and hoped that they were now saved. The man in uniform realized that the main character was the bully Kathleen was talking about. But the girl said he had it all wrong and the student was the victim. Already in the car, she noted that she did not think that simply giving evidence would take so much time. When asked if Batten's hand, which was hit with a bat, hurt, he sweetly replied that it didn't. Their dialogue was interrupted by the student's phone, which received a notification. It said that tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning there would be a ball-throwing tournament. Afraid that he would not be able to win due to his injured hand, he still showed up at the appointed time. Thanking the crowd for their support, the guy looked for Kathleen, but it seems she didn't come. Lyulka asked Batten if he would stream today and offered her help. The main character handed her the phone and told her to set everything up. But most of all, he was tormented by the fact that Kathleen did not come, although she promised. She had previously given him disposable ice packs, which needed to be changed every 10 minutes to ease the pain. You don't even need to untie the scarf, but simply push each new compress under it. Of course, all this was great, but Batten was embarrassed by the fact that he would always wear a pink bow. Before he could finish speaking, the girl hugged him for the first time. She promised to definitely come to the tournament and support the main character. After Kathleen left, the student was overcome with many positive emotions. The memories of good things were interrupted by Steve, who patted him on the back and greeted Batten. And he immediately complimented him on the pink bow on his hand. For the streamer, it was not just a bow, but a real bundle of love. This time, 30 people will participate in the tournament, divided into 3 groups. Steve invited his friend to go behind the machines as it was their time. Loaf approached his machine gun with a little fear, but the crowd believed in him. After several throws, he realized that his left hand was now only suitable for feeding balls under his right. Even just throwing balls under my right hand was terribly painful. Noodles and his friend realized that what they saw in the streams was not even close to reality. Dove noticed that the bandage on his arm was missing yesterday afternoon, and he was curious about what he did last night to hurt his arm so much. At the end of time, the main character was only able to score 698 points. Steve assumed that his opponent's machine gun had broken down and suggested going to the organizers. The student replied that the device was fully operational and that it was not the problem at all. After going through assumptions, the guy in the bandana finally came up with the idea and called the streamer a beetle. It seemed to him that Batten wanted to humiliate everyone in the end, because he already knew his tricks. The viewers on the stream were upset because their idol did not live up to expectations, and Lyulka tried to calm them down. She said that he deliberately took last place to lull the vigilance of his rivals. The main character understood that if he continued in the same spirit, he would not even get into the second round. There were 2 more attempts available, but it was necessary to somehow rebuild and change something. After the start of Group B, Steve said that their best would score a maximum of 780 points. Although, considering how many points he himself scored in comparison with the others, he is just a whipping boy. But he considered Batten one of the main contenders for victory in the final and asked why he hung his nose. The streamer replied that the fact is that yesterday he injured his hand, and now it is difficult for him to throw. The guy in the bandana immediately understood everything and looked at him with a grin. The student waved his hands and asked not to invent anything unnecessary. According to Steve, this damage was normal. He himself did not have a girlfriend. After the end of the competition in Group B, they actually scored the maximum 776 points. Batten asked how Steve guessed so accurately, and he said that he could see right through everyone. Only that day he could not see through Batten, who came to play for the first time. Since the guy in the bandana was such a predictor, he probably knew how many points he needed to score to get into the second round. The minimum required was 760 points, but it would be better, of course, to score more. The first time everyone throws it so-so, but on the second and third attempts, the result is always better. Moreover, in Group B, there are many strong guys, such as Alex. It is he who Steve considers the main rival of the main character. The first time he scored 809 points. It is unlikely that anyone else will be able to compete with him. But he Batten will think later, because first he needs to at least get into the second round. Before the start of the game, he asked that the wolf be in pain, the fox be in pain, and he should not be in pain. On the second attempt, the fans were especially worried and hoped that he would advance to the second round. While throwing balls, the main character understood that he had to forget about his injured hand. At the end of time, they began to announce the names of those who, based on the results of the first round,